Last week in Business and Professional Speech, we went over Chapter 2 in our book. It covers verbals and nonverbal communication. And the topic that came up in class is texting verbal or a nonverbal form of communication? And so after reading Chapter 2 a couple times and trying to pick it apart and not overthink it or get too technical about it, I just went straight off of the definitions that I found, or if the evidence is enough to back up or support what texting is, using verbals or nonverbals. The person receiving the text message needs to interpret nonverbal cues to understand or decode what that message is supposed to be. In this day of technology, it's truly changed the way we communicate with one another, how many people we can talk to. We can talk to people we don't even know personally every single day. And so just based off of the definitions, verbal communication refers to the production of spoken language to send an intentional message to a listener. Nonverbal communication would be communication that refers to signs or forms of communication that convey messages without words, such as body language or eye contact, anything that's not written or verbal communication. So based on that alone, my opinion would be that text messaging is a verbal communication. It is a form of verbal communication. The 3 examples that I found through the book to kind of help me support this opinion or argument would be on chapter 2, page 24. It is a quote: "We have selected a bunch of arbitrary symbols we call words and gestures to represent things. Communication can be traced back as far as 500,000 BCE, and text messaging has been around for about 28 years. I think the first text message was sent 1992, and it was Merry Christmas, if I'm not mistaken. And it kind of has come full circle to me, where hieroglyphics were written on the wall, these images, these pictures, and today we have text messaging and emojis. I know some people who have full conversations with just emojis, and it's so bizarre to me. But it is a form of communication. It's a way, I'm sure if I were to put up emojis on the screen, there's hidden messages and some of these emojis that probably weren't its intended purpose. It's truly a language within itself, I believe. And, whether you use emojis or not, text messaging is still a form of communication. It's how people say when they're coming into work. It's when they're about to meet up with friends or family members. It's to, make plans. Some people use text messaging every day and not even make a single phone call, which is the intended purpose of a cell phone, which is amazing. My second example would be from page 26 to 27. It explains that nonverbals serve 4 purposes: to express emotion, interpersonal attitudes, personality, and to accompany verbals. Through text messaging, you cannot support these 4 cues with just text messaging. You can't really explain emotions. There's a lot of miscommunication that comes with text messaging. Interpersonal attitudes, it's kind of hard to gauge or, help someone or help yourself or move towards a position. If you were to notice a boss was in a good mood or bad mood, it's kind of hard to tell that through the first few text messages sending between you and a boss. You can't really show attitude, personality. It's very hard. I'm sure you can on a very small basis, but not as much as if you were in person. You see how they stand, how they act, how they move their facial features, and things like that. And to accompany verbals, there's no verbals in text messaging. That's what makes it text messaging. My final example kind of stems from our class. The last time we were in class, it was September 17th. We discussed the 7 examples of nonverbals. And I feel like this further supports that texting doesn't have these, so it's not a nonverbal, it's a verbal communication. So the 7 examples of nonverbals would be body language, facial expressions, touch, environment, appearance, tone, and space. If we were to break these down really quickly, you and another person could be in houses next to each other. You cannot read each other's body language from the texting. You cannot see each other. You cannot see it. Facial expressions, you are not in the same room. You're not across from each other having a conversation. You cannot read facial expressions. You can use emojis to kind of gauge or send them in the right direction of what you're trying to say or feel, but it's not the same as your actual smiley face. You're not giving them a high five, a pat on the back. There's no touch involved with text messaging because the point of a text message is to send something from one place to another. The environment, y'all could be in two totally different environments. One could be in the bathroom, one could be in the kitchen, one could be in the living room. Different environments, it doesn't really matter if y'all are in the same environment when y'all are texting, so that doesn't really help the nonverbals case. Your appearance, you could be in your pajamas, or you can't really make judgment from someone's appearance because you're not seeing them. And then tone is a big one. That seems to be the biggest issue with text messaging, is that it lacks tone, so people are always confused, people always read it wrong. It causes a lot of confusion, and I see it every single day, and I experience it every single day. And then space in this context would be, if they're an acquaintance, they'd be, a little away from you. If it's someone personal, like a family member, they're very intimate, you can go for hugs. And then if it's someone like a stranger, they're staying hopefully 6 feet away from you due to COVID, right? So space isn't even considered in this, scenario of y'all texting, because y'all are in two different buildings, right? So based on the things that I found, there's just not enough nonverbals involved that would qualify texting as a nonverbal communication. So I would push towards the verbal communication. A favorite example of mine is that bit from Key and Peele where they're talking about text messaging. The whole video is kind of raunchy, but this is my favorite clip.
Shoot. Keegan's been texting me. Sorry, dude. Missed your texts. I assumed we'd meet at the bar. Whatever. I don't care. Sorry, dude. Missed your texts. I assumed we'd meet at the bar. Whatever. I don't care. Whatever. I don't care.
He can't read what his friend was wearing or the tone or what he was doing, so he didn't fully understand the tone of the message, so it makes it very blurry to understand what's happening, and he ends up getting really upset by the end. And his friend's like, yeah, everything's fine, right? Texting is a major way to communicate nowadays, but texting isn't strong enough on its own to be considered nonverbals. I think you do need the nonverbals and the verbals to have a clear conversation. So I think that's kind of the gamble with texting all the time, is that you're kind of missing out on those nonverbal cues, which is very important. I personally have had less confusing conversations using just nonverbals with, my eyes or body language with like a friend in public, versus actual conversations through text where I'm like, what is happening? And so it's unfortunate it's as confusing as it is, but to wrap up my entire argument, I do believe texting is a verbal communication. We use it all the time. It is a way to communicate. It's just not as solid as verbally with words communicating. Thank you for watching, and I'm looking forward to the next